On April 16th, 2026, at Starbase, Texas, 33 rocket engines ignited simultaneously. Not one, not 10, all 33. For the first time in history, the most powerful rocket booster ever built fired every single engine it carries in a single test. The ground shook, the sky turned orange, and the road to the most powerful rocket launch in the history of human civilization took a giant step forward. This is what happened, why it took so long to get here, and exactly what it means for Flight 12. Booster 19 is the rocket at the center of this story. It is the Super Heavy first stage designated for Starship Flight 12, the first integrated flight of the version 3 Starship architecture. From the outside, it looks like its predecessors, a massive stainless steel cylinder more than 230 feet tall, covered in the complex plumbing and structural hardware of one of the most ambitious vehicles ever built. But from the inside, from the propulsion system up, it is fundamentally different from anything SpaceX has ever flown before. Every one of its 33 engines is a Raptor 3, the latest and most capable generation of the Raptor engine family. Each Raptor 3 produces approximately 280 tons of thrust, a significant improvement over previous versions. With all 33 firing simultaneously, Booster 19 generates approximately 9,240 tons of combined thrust. No rocket in the history of human spaceflight, including the legendary Saturn V that carried Apollo astronauts to the moon, has ever produced that much thrust. The Saturn V generated roughly 3,800 tons at liftoff. Booster 19 in full flight configuration produces more than twice that. SpaceX's Vice President of Starship Engineering, Joe Petrzelka, described Booster 19 publicly as the most ambitious vehicle his team has ever tackled. That is not a casual comment. Joe Petrzelka's team built every previous Super Heavy booster. They built the vehicles that shook the world on the first integrated Starship flights. And he is saying that Booster 19 is the hardest thing they have ever attempted. The road to April 16th was longer and more difficult than almost anyone watching from the outside realized. The Booster 19 campaign began with a 10-engine static fire on March 16, 2026, at the newly constructed Orbital Launch Pad 2. That test ended abruptly, lasting only a few seconds before the ground systems detected an issue and shut everything down. The abort was caused by a failure in the apex combustors, the gas generators that supply high-pressure nitrogen to the Water Deluge System beneath the launch mount. The premature cutoff caused mechanical damage to approximately half of Booster 19's installed Raptor 3 engines. SpaceX made a swift and drastic decision. They rolled the booster back to the megabay and replaced all 33 engines entirely. Every engine, drawn from what had been allocated to the next booster, Booster 20, the entire engine set was swapped out in a repair operation that, on any other rocket program in the world, would have set the schedule back by months. After the full engine replacement, Booster 19 returned to Pad 2 and began a new round of testing. A 33-engine spin prime was completed, in which all 33 engines are spun up using fuel-rich gas generator operation to condition the turbopumps and verify engine readiness without full ignition. Then came a 33-engine igniter test, confirming that all ignition systems were functional. Then, SpaceX attempted the full 33-engine static fire, and the attempt aborted due to a ground support equipment issue. The next day, April 16th, they tried again, and this time it worked. The static fire that SpaceX achieved on April 16th lasted approximately 3 seconds. That is a short duration by historical static fire standards. Some observers immediately raised questions about whether 3 seconds was the planned duration or whether there was an unplanned early cutoff. SpaceX's response on X, which stated simply and cleanly, first 33-engine static fire for Super Heavy V3, indicated the company's satisfaction with the result. The absence of any anomaly announcement, combined with the immediate progression to subsequent testing, suggested that 3 seconds was either the planned duration for this specific test, or that the data gathered was sufficient for SpaceX's engineering team to proceed. In SpaceX's testing philosophy, a static fire is not necessarily designed to run for the full flight duration. It is designed to validate engine start sequences, combustion stability, and ground system performance at full power, which 3 seconds of all engine firing can accomplish if the sensors are correctly positioned and the data acquisition systems capture what they need. What happened the day after the static fire was equally significant. On April 17th, SpaceX conducted a full wet dress rehearsal of Booster 19, the most demanding ground test short of an actual launch. During the WDR, the booster was fully fueled with all of its cryogenic propellants, liquid oxygen at minus 297 degrees Fahrenheit, and liquid methane at minus 258 degrees Fahrenheit, in a full simulation of launch day propellant loading procedures. The numbers involved in fueling Booster 19 are almost incomprehensible. The vehicle carries approximately 3,400 metric tons of propellant at liftoff, 4,000 metric tons of propellant across all connected systems in approximately 30 minutes, Those loading speeds are critical not just for operational efficiency, but for the cryogenic health of the propellants themselves. Liquid oxygen and liquid methane must be maintained within precise temperature windows throughout the loading process and right up to ignition. Loading faster means less time for thermal stratification and propellant warming at the top of the tanks, which could affect engine performance. The record loading speed achieved during the WDR is itself a story of version 3 improvements. SpaceX redesigned the propellant loading system for V3 to enable dramatically faster turnaround between flights. One of the fundamental requirements for making Starship work as a truly reusable system at the cadence Musk has described, potentially hundreds of flights per year, is the ability to refuel a booster and have it ready to fly again in hours rather than days. The WDR data, showing a full propellant load completed in 30 minutes, represents progress toward that goal that previous booster versions had not demonstrated. Ship 39, the upper stage that will fly with Booster 19 on Flight 12, completed its own static fire testing at the Massey's test site adjacent to Starbase. Ship 39 is the first V3 Starship upper stage, carrying 6 Raptor 3 engines in its base, 3 sea-level optimized and 3 vacuum optimized. The static fire at Massey's validated the ship's propulsion system performance and cleared it for integration with Booster 19 for the full stack rollout and combined testing phase. Ship 39 also carries a dummy payload described as a Starlink V3 simulator, a mass representative stand-in for the next generation Starlink satellites that operational Starship flights will eventually deploy in enormous numbers. The inclusion of this simulator means Flight 12's payload bay loading reflects real operational conditions rather than flying empty. The full stack configuration, Booster 19 with Ship 39 on top, represents a total vehicle standing more than 400 feet tall. The combined height exceeds the Statue of Liberty by a factor of nearly 2.5. The combined thrust at liftoff, from both the 33 booster engines and the 6 ship engines firing simultaneously during the initial seconds of flight, will be the highest ever generated by any rocket in the history of human spaceflight. Not approximately, not close, by a substantial and historically unprecedented margin. The Flight 12 mission profile itself has been adjusted from earlier Starship flights in ways that reflect SpaceX's growing operational experience and its commitment to responsible flight path selection. Previous Starship flights used a trajectory that arced northward over Cuba, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, and the Leeward Islands. The new trajectory for Flight 12 passes through a southern corridor, threading between Jamaica and Cuba and then between St. Vincent and Grenada before heading out over the Atlantic. This revised path avoids major commercial aviation routes, keeps the vehicle over open water for the majority of its flight, and reduces the overlap with populated landmasses during the ascent phase. The revised trajectory required coordination with multiple nations and aviation authorities across the Caribbean, a process that SpaceX completed ahead of the static fire campaign. No booster catch attempt is planned for Flight 12. This is a deliberate decision that reflects SpaceX's testing philosophy. The primary objectives of Flight 12 are to validate the V3 booster and ship hardware in actual flight conditions, to test the new Raptor 3 engine cluster performance under ascent loads, and to validate the new trajectory design. Adding a mechanical catch attempt to the booster return phase would introduce additional complexity and potential failure. Modes into a flight that is already carrying a significant number of first-time hardware validations. SpaceX chose to simplify the recovery operations for this flight, allowing the engineering team to focus on the vehicle performance data that Flight 12 is specifically designed to generate. Ship 39 is targeted for a controlled splashdown in the Indian Ocean, the same general recovery zone used for previous Starship ship test flights. The broader context for what Flight 12 represents extends well beyond SpaceX's internal engineering milestones. Starship is the vehicle that NASA has selected for the Artemis 3 and Artemis 4 lunar landing missions, the flights that will put human beings on the surface of the moon for the first time since December 1972. NASA has approved Starship as its human landing system under a contract signed with SpaceX, and the agency's schedule for returning astronauts to the lunar surface depends directly on Starship's development progress. A successful Flight 12 that demonstrates V3 hardware performance, trajectory flexibility, and operational maturity is not just a win for SpaceX's internal program, it is a critical data point for NASA's planning of the missions that will follow. Beyond the moon, Starship is the vehicle that SpaceX intends to send to Mars. Musk has described a Mars colonization architecture that depends on Starship being capable of carrying 100 or more people PER flight, refueling in orbit using propellant transferred from a depot vehicle, and landing on the Martian surface using a landing configuration that has yet to be fully flight tested. Every Starship flight, including Flight 12, generates engineering data, operational experience, and manufacturing knowledge that advances that long-term mission. The integration of XAI with SpaceX earlier in 2026, valued together at $1.25 trillion, included explicit plans for orbital data centers powered and connected by Starlink infrastructure and launched by Starship. The commercial and scientific future that Musk has described for the vehicle makes every successful milestone not just an engineering achievement, but a step toward a fundamentally different relationship between human civilization and the space around it. What the 33-engine static fire of April 16th proved, most fundamentally, is that the Raptor 3 engine cluster works. 33 engines of the most advanced hydrocarbon rocket engine ever built, igniting simultaneously, sustaining combustion, delivering the thrust levels they were designed for without a single engine failure or unexpected anomaly, is a validation of SpaceX's manufacturing consistency and engine design maturity that no simulation or individual engine test could provide. Getting 33 complex machines with hundreds of individual components each to all work at the same time is not trivially easy. It is one of the hardest things in rocket engineering. And on April 16th, SpaceX did it for the first time in human history. To fully appreciate what the April 16th static fire validated, you need to understand what Raptor 3 actually is and why it represents such a significant advance over what came before. The original Raptor engine that powered the first Starship flights was itself the most technically advanced methane-fueled rocket engine ever built. It operated at chamber pressures exceeding 300 bar, higher than any previously flown rocket engine using a full-flow staged combustion cycle that burns all of its propellant through the turbopumps before it reaches the main combustion chamber. That architecture is extraordinarily efficient, but also extraordinarily complex, with more components operating at extreme temperatures and pressures than almost any comparable engine in history. Raptor 2 simplified the external plumbing and packaging, removing several components that had added weight and complexity without significantly contributing to performance. Raptor 3 goes further still. SpaceX engineers have described Raptor 3 as having dramatically simplified external architecture, with much of the engine's plumbing and structure integrated into the main engine body rather than routed externally. Early images of Raptor 3 on the booster showed an engine that looked almost completely smooth compared to the complex web of pipes, valves, and brackets visible on Raptor 2. That simplification serves multiple purposes. It reduces the number of potential failure points. It reduces manufacturing time. It reduces weight. And it makes the engine faster to inspect and verify between flights, which is critical for the rapid reusability that the entire Starship business model depends on. The thrust increase in Raptor 3 comes not primarily from higher chamber pressure, but from improved efficiency across the turbopump and combustion systems, extracting more performance from the same fundamental thermodynamic cycle that has powered every Raptor engine since the beginning of the program. Getting 33 of these engines to start, accelerate to full power, and sustain stable combustion in the tight geometric arrangement of Booster 19's engine baseplate, where exhaust plumes interact and acoustic loads reflect off the ground and the surrounding hardware, is a fluid dynamics and combustion stability challenge of exceptional complexity. Each engine's exhaust interacts with the others. The shock diamonds that form in the exhaust plumes can reflect off adjacent engines and create pressure fluctuations that, in the worst case, could cause combustion instability or mechanical resonance. Managing all of those interactions requires a combination of engine placement design, startup sequencing, and engine controller. Software that SpaceX has been refining across every flight test in the program. The fact that all 33 engines started cleanly and ran without anomaly on April 16th is therefore not just a count of 33 things working. It is a validation of the entire integrated system of engine placement, sequencing, control software, and propellant feed plumbing working together as a coherent whole. The next steps before Flight 12 launches are full-stack integration, in which Booster 19 and Ship 39 are mated on the orbital launch mount at Pad 2, followed by combined stack testing, propellant loading rehearsals with the full vehicle, and regulatory clearance from the FAA. The FAA's licensing process for Starship has historically required weeks to months and has been one of the factors contributing to the gaps between Starship flights. The updated timeline from Musk, who confirmed approximately 4 to 6 weeks from early April as the expected window for Flight 12, pointed toward a mid to late May 2026 target, though SpaceX's schedules for Starship have consistently proven optimistic. The May 4th explosion of a water deluge gas generator at Pad 2, which caused localized damage to the deluge farm infrastructure, but left the pad itself intact, created additional uncertainty about exactly when the launch window opens. What is not uncertain is that the 33-engine static fire happened. The most powerful rocket booster ever built fired all of its engines together on April 16, 2026, and the data it produced is now in the hands of the engineers who will use it to clear Booster 19 for the most powerful rocket launch in the history of human spaceflight. Everything that comes next, the Moon, the Mars missions, the orbital data centers, the colonization architecture, depends on this vehicle working. And on April 16th, it worked.